Let's move to the National Football League and the Chiefs beating the Raiders last night by 1. The Raiders jumped out to a 17-0 lead before the Chiefs began their comeback. Las Vegas head coach Josh McDaniels elected to go for that 2-point conversion to take the lead with 4.5 to play in the game, but the attempt failed. Do you back McDaniels' decision to go for the lead, Tony, rather than the tie?
No. I was against what happened, and I will concede that I'm not just old school, I'm old. Okay, so I bring a lot of history to making a decision like this. But let's look at this. There's 4.5 minutes left in the game. There's no particular urgency at that point. Let's take best case scenario, Mike. Best case scenario, they make the 2-point conversion. They go up by 1 point. They have to give the ball right back to the Chiefs, who have Patrick Mahomes,
right,
who are at home. And so maybe you can envision them going down the field and kicking a winning field goal late in the game. The worst case scenario, which is what happened, is you're losing and you have to give the ball back to the Chiefs anyway. So you put yourself in a hole that I don't think you have to do. I'd have kicked it. I'd have said to my defense, go out there, stop them, get us the ball back in a tie game. That's what I would have done.
Yeah, that's how I grew up too, Tony. But I will say this. I didn't think that, look, coaches going for some of these 2-point conversions, common sense never seems to play into it anymore. They all just resort to immediately, well, analytics says you do this. Get garbage.
Yeah.
It's garbage. Okay? Because the analytics in which some simulator does it 10,000 times doesn't have your back and your quarterback and your play sheet and what you're calling and your temperament and your psychology and your emotion if your guys have choked in 6 of the last 9 close games. It didn't have any of that. So I don't want to hear analytics made me do it. That's just a lazy lie. Now, I wasn't all that against it in this case, Tony, because like you said, we thought the Raiders were going to get the ball back, and they did. All right, and they had a play in which receivers run into each other. When somebody in that single coverage is likely to be open enough to at least extend, and they didn't do it. So I don't think it was the worst thing. But, Tony, coaches just seem to be nuts. Now, head coaches, when it comes to 2-point conversions.
We saw a rookie coach, Nathaniel Hackett of Denver, do this earlier in the year, and you roasted him.
Yes.
You, among others, you roasted him.
I did.
We saw John Harbaugh do this. Didn't get roasted because he's won a Super Bowl, although I was tempted to roast him. And now we see Josh McDaniels do this. And as a head coach now, in the NFL as a head coach, not as an assistant on Patriot teams with all those rings. As a head coach, want to get the number exact, I think he's lost something like 21 out of his last 27 games.
How about those analytics? How about that?
No. What are we doing
this,
here?
Holmes.
What are we doing? Let's stay with the Chiefs-Raiders game and move to the issue surrounding roughing the passer. Patrick Mahomes was slung to the ground once, got no call. Derek Carr was overwhelmed by Chris Jones and fumbled the ball, but Jones was flagged for landing on Carr with his full body weight. Wilbon, Jones called for reviews of roughing calls because they're not reviewed now. Do you agree with him?
Tony, I understand the logic. And Troy Aikman immediately last night, I love Troy Aikman, listening to him, and I know you do too. Troy called for this.
I do.
Same thing. And Tony, immediately I sort of nodded. And I understand, by the way, I really like Chris Jones and listening to Chris Jones of the Chiefs as well. I get it because they got to be frustrated. You play this game on the defensive side. You earn your paycheck that way. And they give you this garbage because they're trying to protect the pretty boy quarterbacks, and that's all this is about. That's all this is about. I understand it, but I don't think it solves anything, Tone. What are you going to review? What are you going to say if you review that play? They're going to find some reason to justify throwing that flag because they want to throw it, because they don't give a damn about Chris Jones. They only care about the quarterback. And so I understand the need to do something, but I don't think this is going to correct anything that we're talking about. Do you?
Yeah. We can go back and forth on this. This stems from Tua being concussed the other day, and there's a reaction to that in the NFL, and I think many people would say it is an overreaction at the moment. It's an overreaction. But you sit here day after day and you say the NFL doesn't care about player safety, and yet I think this is a player safety issue, and then you rail against the fact that the defender gets called for this. By the technical letter of the law, the defender is supposed to get called for this. I think this is different than Brady for me because there's a fumble here, Mike. That ball is out. People, when the ball is out, everybody rushes for the ball. And if you fall on somebody, to me, that's the way it goes. So I would not, even though it is technically the letter of the law, I would not have penalized the Chiefs in this particular case. I mean, I wouldn't have done it. But I will tell you, the NFL is going to meet, and they're going to do something because they know that this is a problem. If I were the NFL, this is what I would release, and I wrote it down. Give me 10 seconds. We need to protect our players. We know this is a contact sport. We know the basis of our game is physical contact, but we need to try and make our sport as safe as possible. We may be overcorrecting here, but it's better that we err on the side of caution. We'll go back to the drawing board on this, but we will keep trying to keep our players as safe as possible. You may not believe a word of it.
No, I don't.
But from a public relations standpoint,
that's all it is.
That's what they're going to have to do.
They hide behind it because they're not trying to protect Chris Jones. They're not trying to protect the dude that sacked Tom Brady.
Chris Jones,
they don't give a damn.
Chris Jones doesn't need protection.
Really?
Chris
Jones only some players,
is a great player.
Pretty boy quarterbacks favored by Tony Kornheiser, they get protection. So you don't care about it either. And I'm glad you're reflecting what they think.
All quarterbacks and all running backs and all wide receivers who are the object of violent collisions, all of them need protection. Don't tell me it's pretty boy quarterbacks. All of them. Let's take a break.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.